So there we go. So now we are on. So this is the actual class is supposed to be tools, techniques, and tips. Watercolor tools, techniques, and tips. And I thought, well, last week we were talking about it about sunflowers, and we can talk about the basic tools that you'll need at the same time. We can paint too. So let's go over. We'll talk about the essentials of watercolor, and I'll just put these away for a second. Or maybe I'll leave them in the when I'm painting up so you can see this. I'll put this back in, but in a little bit. So the most important thing, there's three. It's like in any art form, you need your basic materials. So for watercolor, you need water, obviously. That's the first ingredient. So usually what I do is I always have a couple of containers of water. One will get really dirty and one will be a little less dirty by the end of it. But it's good to have more water than you think you'll need. So that's why I always have two containers. Then the color is the next ingredient. I like transparent colors. I'd rather have expensive colors and fewer of than a really cheap set with a lot of colors in them. I'd rather have, and I mentioned before, my little favorite colors are, here's different ways you can store them. Oops, I got some on my hand. So the colors, the three primary colors that I would always have in my stash, no matter what, is quinacridone, magenta, which is this color. It's kind of I'll show it to you. It's always in one of my palettes. I never do without a quinacridone magenta, and a Hansa yellow, which is right in here. This is going to be your primary colors: quinacridone magenta, Hansa yellow in any brand, and phthalo blue. Phthalo blue is right there, and I think it's right there. But I always have them, and then I can put other colors that I like, pretty colors, but those are my favorites. And I'm going to just work with a limited palette today, but I'll just show you different ways. Like this is a Gorilla palette, the back palette, it's called the Gorilla palette, and it comes, actually I have a nice little outdoor plein air kit that this slips right into, and I love it because it has a lot of mixing space, a lot of places that you can do your work. So, and I like the wells are really big, so you can use big brushes. So those are pretty neat. And then the other one is this one. I bought this, it wasn't expensive. But one thing I really like to do is if I'm working with watercolor, I like to remember what paints I'm working with. So here I just did a little swatch, which is just a piece of, here we go, just a piece of paper that I stuck inside this palette. I don't know I think this was meant to be a storage thing, like so you could put paints or brushes, or, if you want to store your brushes. That's pretty handy. You want to take this somewhere, you got put your stuff in that. I think that's pretty neat. And then my palette, I love this palette because it's got lots of room and for large areas. So, and I remember the name of this. Let's see. I wonder if it has a mark on it. Yes, it is called, and it wasn't expensive. It's called Jones Plastic Palette. Something Jones Plastic Palette. I can give you the actual, I bought this at an art supply store when I was going into art supply stores. But this one was pretty inexpensive. And always when I get colors and I put them in my palette like this, this was my, I squeezed out my favorites at the time. I mean, here quinacridone magenta, Hansa yellow, and phthalo blue is right there. So I've always got those always. And then quinacridone gold is another great color. Transparent colors, I would always stick with those as much as possible. So here's so here I just made a little swatch on some watercolor paper of each color, so I know what they are. Because when you do transparent colors, most of them are so dark you can't tell what it is. Like I can't tell that's a violet. I can't tell that's a moon glow color. It's really hard to tell. So that's why swatching them out is really a good thing. Same with this, like on my little tins here, these colors, I just swatched them out, and here they are. I wouldn't know what they are half the time. So doing this is really, really, really helpful. So that's basic there. So we've got our colors covered, kind of a very general, quick overview of color. Then we want to talk about paper. Paper is, very important to have good paper if you can. Canson makes an XL. It's a student grade paper, and I think I might have some. It's in a pad, and it's really reasonable, and it's decent. And then there's also any grade, 100% cotton cold press is kind of what we use mostly in this class. Hot press is just a little too smooth, and the rough is a little rough. So I like that in between cold press. So this is a cold press paper. It's a single sheet. I've got some masking tape, and I just bought this stuff. I love it. This is 3M delicate surface washi tape. So it's really just washi tape, and I like the width of it, but you can get it in different widths. And the washi tape is very thin, and it won't tear your paper. And I like this kind of very kind of a muted lavender. I think it's going to be nice. I'm hoping this will be the first time I've used it, so I'm hoping it will give me a sharp edge. We'll find out. But any masking tape, painter's tape you might have in your garage, anything like that is great to mask, and it also helps to secure your paper. And I use these little masonite panels so that I can move my paints around. I can lift, make drippy drips, and you'll see what I mean when we start. All right, so kind of a general thing. Oh, and brushes. You need a brush. Of course, we need brushes, right? So I've got my brushes somewhere. I know I had them here. Oh, I know what I did. I stuck them in the tray. I couldn't figure out what I did with them. Oh boy. So here, today we're going to use round brushes. Any size, like I've got these round brushes. And here I'm going to get my pencil out. I'll get all my stuff back out of that little thing. And we'll get started in our sunflowers. So you can use, just make us this is 5 by 7. So that's the size we're working in, smallish. We're not trying to do a big, huge painting. We're just going to make some sketches of sunflowers. So the first one that I did, and we're going to do 2. So get 2 pieces of paper. And this is blank because I'm going to show you, actually, I'm going to show you this, how I'm going to do this one. So to compose your picture, and you've got a picture of a sunflower I just sent, but you don't need one in this. You really don't. I have a little thing that I am going to draw a circle with. It's just this round lid, and I'm not going to put it smack dab in the middle. I'm going to put it off to the left just a little bit, like this. And I'm going to go very, very lightly. As people are coming in, hello. So I'm just going to go make a very light circle, really very pale. I don't want it to, you won't even be able to see what I have. It's so pale. But I'm just going to make a circle right here. If you don't see it, it's because it's very pale, but that's how big it is right there. So just a very light pencil mark. And I'm not going to draw anything other than that. This is the only thing I'm drawing is a little circle, or it's a circle that's going to be the center of the sunflower. So however big, I'd say that's about 2.5 inches in diameter. So you can decide what size circle you want. Like if you want a smaller circle, just make a smaller circle, but very, very light. So our first thing that we're going to do is I'm going to decide what colors I want to use. I haven't used this palette in forever, so I'm going to go ahead and play with it. It's been a long time. This paint's been here, but there's some colors I could use on it already, so I might as well. And I'm going to just put it over here so I can access it. And we'll go over the drawing stuff. How I did this, and also if you have really inexpensive paints that are just chalky, they kind of are chalky. The finished result is chalky, but they're really beautiful. So what I do is I mix a little gum arabic in it, and it totally makes it a game changer. So if you have really inexpensive paints like this, and you don't want to buy new paints, but you've got these, you can get a little jar, a little thing of gum arabic, and that will make your watercolor experience so much better. It'll just change it. It makes it glossy. It doesn't make it chalky at all. So let's start with the sunflower. And of course, we're going to be using yellows. I've got, mostly yellow and some orange probably. So I've got yellows already here, and I can always add some transparent orange or gold or something, but I'm going to use a very small round brush to make my petals. And I'm going to use this circle I just made as the pivoting point. Now you could draw a second circle very light to give you the ending point of your petals, but I don't think we need to do that. I think let's just be loose and, you know, not worry about it being perfect, because some flowers aren't, all flowers aren't perfect. You know, they all have that, you know, we want something that looks organic and not too perfect. So I'm going to take some yellow, and I think that must be, I'm not sure which yellow that is, but I'm going to put some hands of yellow in there because the hands of yellow is a lot more transparent than whatever might be in there. And then I've got a little, some orange over here. I'll just have it there in case I need it. So the first thing I'm going to do is make my first petal, and I'm going to start at the center, or right a little below that circle, a little under. So, but I'm going to use my circle as my guide here. I'm just going to start a little petal, and I'm just going to kind of make it sort of, you know, like wonky like this. I don't want to be really try to make it perfect. I'm going to grab a little orange and just kind of put one petal at a time we're going to do. So there's some, I don't know what that is. That's something brownish, but I'm going to drop some color down at the base here and I'm going to leave the yellow, the top of the petal alone, but I want to add some color down at the base a little bit. And whatever that color is, I'm going to do like an orangey color. Just let that do its thing. And I'm going to take, I'm going to kind of do several all around, and I'm going to space them apart just a little bit. What I mean by that is I'm not going to put them right next to each other. So I'm going to just go here, and I'm going to change the direction a little bit and kind of make it just kind of lift, you know, push down and then lift up. And you've got this really pretty shape. And then I'll just put some of that orangey, whatever that kind of a mixture. Really, what I did is I mixed a little bit of orange with some of this gray blue that was on my palette. And it's just giving me a nice dimension here. And I'll clean my brush out. Always clean your brush between each, especially if you're using light colors. And I'll grab a little of this darker yellow here. And I'm just going to go use just around the whole thing. And I really don't want to spend too much time. So I'm spacing these little leaves apart so that basically the leaves sort of touch each other. But they're not, they can touch each other. It's not a problem, but have them go inside that circle, maybe about an eighth of an inch. And I'll just keep adding more petals, just with this yellow. And I'll just do the same thing. Just start it here and just kind of make them all similar in length, but have them go in different directions. Kind of meeting, you know, just different. You can see how it's just going in different directions. And then, you know, if you want to add that before it dries, you want to add that color here at the base of it, so that it sort of blends just a little bit like that. And then we're going to keep going around around it. And this is our first layer of petals. So we're going to be doing more layers, probably at least one more layer for sure. You can add a little bit of green, actually. If you add a little green to your petals, because sometimes sunflowers have that little greenish tint to it, very, very, very subtle tint. So I just put a little bit of green just to see. And I'm noticing this brush is not behaving the way I'd want it to behave. So I'm going to switch it out. It's just making flat, kind of fat petals, but I'll wait. I'll do this later. But if you find that you want to change your brush, if it's not doing what you want it to do, always just switch your brush out and you'll notice a big difference in the way your petals look. And that's the thing, you just try playing with your brushes, and if they're not giving you the marks that you're looking for, just trade them out, try something else. It's definitely the brushes. That's why I have probably 20 different round brushes, and each one has its own personality. So I'm just going to kind of, this time I'm going a little faster because I just need to loosen up a little bit here. And I'm just kind of, I'll do 3 at a time, and then I'll do the dark shading. And I don't want them too even. Yeah, like that. And I'll just do some shading on all these, put some orangey color right at the base. and just let that kind of do its thing. And if you want a bolder color, just make your dark color more saturated, because these are pretty pale. I'll just think I'll just kind of saturate it just a little bit more. And then I'm going to go off the page a little bit, just kind of off. That's why I like them off center, because you don't really want it to be right smack dab in the middle. You just kind of roll your brush around to create those wonky lines and shapes, like that. Starting to look better now that I'm loosening up a little bit. And now I'll take that in center color, and I'm just going to drop these in while the area is still wet. And if it dries like it just did, I'll just re-wet it so that it can see how it's dried there. So what I'll do is right now, I'll just add some more yellow to that to maybe get it to spread out. So right now it doesn't look much like a sunflower, but that's normal because we're just starting out on that. Okay, so I'm just making those leaves those petals a lot more noticeable and loose. And I'm kind of rotating my brush. And that's kind of how, when you get to know a brush, you can, just kind of feel what it does and experiment with how it works. All right, that's my first layer. Now, I don't need it to dry. It is helpful to have this layer dry. So I'll go ahead and hit this with a gun so that it just dries at least most of it, at least the first areas that I started with. All right, first layer dry, sort of. Second, I'm going to do the same thing, except I'm going to go in between these petals, but I'm going to make them a little larger and maybe a little bolder in color. A lot more yellow. I think it just needs to have a lot more pop. So these will go, I'm going to go right in between the petals that I started with. So in between the two, and I'm going to just go right over it. And it's because the sunflowers have a very translucent petals, and they will show, when it will be translucent, the different petals, the back petals will show through. You can see I didn't lose that. So I'm going to do this in between each one here. And I'm just going to go kind of quickly here, because I think I was going a little slow on the other one. And I'm just twisting my brush kind of just to make a petal shape, kind of long, sort of. They have lots of little, if you look at the sunflowers, they have these long, kind of sort of uneven shape. Doesn't have to be exactly perfect. And what I'll do is I'm going to work kind of fast here, because I do want to put some dark color in there. And go like that. And then I'll go ahead and I'll put my orange. Now that is a prettier color, I think. I'll put a little bit of orange now, right where I just placed, where some of that darker, could be orange, it could be a brown, kind of a brownish orange. And I'm just going right where I just touched. I'm right where the petals I just made. I'm just dropping that color in like that. So there's my petals. They're pretty much there. I'm pretty happy with those. Now let's work on the centers. It's probably a good idea to dry your center. Let's get it, fairly dry. It doesn't matter. You can have a little wet into wet. It can bleed into the paint, into the flowers. That's fine too, or into the petals. All right, now we're going to work on this. What we could do is we're going to use a mixture of a brown, kind of a brown. You can use your yellow that you have, because yellow, and you can mix, that's a really reddish brown, so I want to make that much darker. If you have like a dark color, Payne's gray or a sepia tone, something to get a really dark color. And you can even mix some purple. I mean, there's a lot of colors to get that dark. I got this beautiful purple, and I'll tell you what colors these are, just so. This is quinacridone purple, which is a gorgeous purple that if you mix it with a transparent orange, you're going to get a gorgeous, deep, rich brown. See, I'm not, and I could add some Payne's gray or something to that, but I think that's a beautiful color. I can always add a little blue to that or let's see, I'm gonna grab some of this phthalo blue, just a little, to really darken it and deepen it even more. So there, now I've got a nice rich dark color, and I'm just gonna go ahead and put it in my center. Now, when you're working with this, you don't want to make a perfect circle, like that little line, that your pencil line. You're going to make little between each petal, you've got this little point that happens. So between each petal, make a little dark, whatever this is called. It's part of the flower, but this will keep that. It will kind of make that circle disappear. Sort of, it's like a little sharp point that goes in between each petal. But let's fill in the circle quickly if we can. And I'm going to grab a little, I don't know what that color is. Okay, that's a beautiful, that's what I need, something dark. We can always add dark light later with a white pen or some white ink. You know, we don't need to worry about that. We'll just get that dark center in. We can always, you know, add later. And then you throw a little green if you have some green, just to kind of change it up a little bit. Let's see, I'll grab some of this green. You know, like that. Just kind of mix your brown up so it's not exactly perfect. And it's just a loose sunflower. This is one that it's not, you know, I'm not trying to get a photograph. So I'm just not trying to get it photographic looking. So what I'm taking now is I'm taking my brush and I'm going outside that circle that I drew. I kind of want to cover that up. I don't want that there. It's got to go. So, you know, like that. So you can see we've got that center, and I can add, let's see, I'm going to grab a little green here, even though I'm not there. That was that bamboo green is called. I think it's more like a phthalo green if you have that. And I'm going to just kind of pop in those sort of little seeds. You know, I want it to be dotted. So I'm just taking some of my color and I'm just dropping it in like little dots. And I've got, now it's pretty dark there, but you can see that it's kind of looking textured. Now, if you want a texture and you're really not sure, if you felt like it's too dark, another little handy thing to have while this is still wet, I'm just going to kind of spread this out a little farther outside that circle here. I'm just going to take my brush and flick it outward so that I got those little points are a little sharper, like this. Yeah, okay, that's probably good enough. And what I have is it's called a sea wool sponge. And this one's a dry one. I'm going to see what happens when I do it on a dry one. I'm just going to take it and then pressing in it. And you can see I just pulled out some of that color. And that will give me the texture I'm looking for. Now I'm going to just get it wet. And I have to really get as dry as I can. But it did a nice lift, just enough that I needed. There. This is not going to have a background. We're not going to do, at least not yet. We may want to do a background on color, but so I'm going to try it again. This time I wet it, and I'm just going to pick it up. Oh, I don't know if you saw that, but it did lift some of the color. There we go. Get some of that out of the way. So that's a way you can do that if you have too much color. But if you don't have a sponge, you can also use the tip of your brush to lift color. So let's say you want to lift a little bit of color off to give some texture. Just take your brush and wipe off, almost clean it and get almost all the water off, and then just go in and tap. Basically, you can create texture because the brush becomes a sort of a siphon. It becomes a straw if it's dry, if there's no water on it, or you know, if you've blotted off most of the water. So there, I'm able to get a texture there. I'm just going to let that be. I think that's fun the way it is. And now let's make our stems. And I think it looks very sunflower-like, but I could do another layer. I could add little lines to it, little, you know, just for the petals, but I think it looks fine for now. And I'll just take some green. And this color is, let's see, ooh, I don't know what that is, but kind of a yellow green, because as I remember, you want it like a yellowish green. And I'm going to take my stem and I'm going to kind of bring it about right here. And I'm just going to, not perfectly straight up and down, but the sunflower stems are on the thicker side. So we want to just give it a kind of thick line. And just that's all I'm going to do for now. And then I'll just kind of make it so that it looks like maybe I'll put some of that green right in here just to make it feel like it's going up the stem. And also you can take some of that same green and just kind of bring it in a few areas just to kind of make it not look so disjointed, because that circle is doing that a little bit, but that's all right. So I'm just putting a little bit of this same green that's in the stem. I'm just kind of putting it around the perimeter of my little brown center, just enough to give it a little bit of interest. And I could add a little of that green and pull it out just a little bit between the petals, because I might decide to do a leaf or something out there, but also that gives it kind of a dimension too. I'm just going to pull these out like this. And there, I think that's enough for that. Now, time to make a leaf. Now the leaves are kind of long, and they're kind of long and sort of crumply looking. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start my leaf down here below. I'm not doing it from here. I'm going to start it as if it's starting down below the picture. So here's my leaf down here, but I'm not going to paint yet. And then I'm going to bring it up, and I'm just going to kind of make this sort of crumply shape. I'm just going to do it like this. So I just squished my brush down and there. And I don't want it perfect because, you know, perfection is not what we're looking for. Now this doesn't look like it's connected, does it? But it sort of is supposed to be anyway. And I could widen this or make it, you know, whatever shape I want, but I wanted it to be a little bigger, I think. So I'm just going to make it larger, and I'm going to have it go off the sides. So now that I've made the shape of the flower, or not the flower, the leaf, and I'm just going to put a little, make it a little darker in this, maybe this area here. Kind of give it some shadow here, maybe just half. And then I'll do the same thing on this while it's still wet. I'm going to shade, I'm going to make it dark on one side so that my right side will be lighter. And then I'll throw in a little of that yellow, because there is yellow, maybe just a few blotches of yellow so that it doesn't look so perfectly solid green. And then right here below here, I'm just going to make a little shadow, and that's this brown color combination. I'm adding that shadow on the very right side, just dropping the color in on the right side of the stem. I'm not trying to brush it in, I'm just dropping it in. And I'm doing this, I'm going to take these little colors, same thing here, I'm just going to take some of that same color and just bring it out just a little bit on that. So that is that one. I'm going to leave that alone. I think it's a very delightful sunflower at this point. I may add some more details to the petals. If you wanted to add details or depth of color, let me wipe all this out real quick. You could just do another layer. So I think that some of these petals need a little more enhancement here. So I'm just going to take another yellow, this little deeper yellow. If you don't have a deeper yellow, you can take your Hansa yellow and just put a little bit of quinacridone gold if you have that, or an orange color, anything that you could add. So I've just deepened this little thing of color here, and I'm going to just go, I'm going to just take some more layers here because it just needs a little bit more. And I'm going over, it's basically going over the petals that I had just recently done. And that's just giving it some more depth. And I can also create little lines right here in the right at the base, just making some lines right at the base to give it that look of the petals and the lines that the sunflowers have. And I'm just going to go every other one. I don't want to do every single one because then it'll look too even. Like this. And this is just building, we're just building layers. And then it's going to look more dimensional that way. And this one needs another little layer. This one needs it. And always know that your watercolors will dry a few shades lighter than what you see on the paper. So don't be shy. when it comes to that. So now I'm going to take a little bit of this brown color, and I'm going to go right here just on a few of these, just to give it that sort of dimension I'm looking for, depth. And that's all that is. And I could also take those as they dry, pull that color out just a little bit to give a feeling of those lines in the petals, those translucent lines going through the petals. So this is doing it without drawing, pre-drawing it ahead of time, and it works. So I'll let this dry, and I can come back to that later, add some dark later, but I'm just going to set this aside for now. And I wanted to share with you a way that you can just, this is actually a pretty quick way. Oh, painter's tape was pulling, I'm just reading. Painter's tape was pulling paper when I took it off. Okay, so we'll talk about painter's, if it's the blue masking paper, or if it's the blue stuff, there's ways to get that from happening. Okay, so let's say you have some masking tape and it's the blue stuff, or it's really sticky, more sticky than you normally would think. And this happens if it tears the paper, that means the paper is more, it's not sized. It's sized, each paper has its own quality, like sizing and things like that, and strength, and all kinds of, there's so many variables. So what I do is I take my paint tape and I open it up, and I've got my pant leg. If I can show you, here, I'm gonna just show you my pant leg. Here we go. Here's what I do. Dun, 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 like this. I do this, and that will make because you're getting a little lint, so that's gonna make it less sticky. And then you'll have less apt to tear your paper. So that's just a tip. Oh, so let's go on this one. This is, I'm going to grab some of that gorgeous blue that we're looking at. When we see the background, we see a gorgeous blue background, kind of a cerulean blue, or it's not a cool blue. It's like a really beautiful blue. So I'm going to just do it. And I've got my masking fluid. It's been dry for quite some time. And I painted just the petals, not on the inside much. I painted a little bit here. I just want to retain the light colors while I do the background. So we're going to do the background first with this one. So if you don't have masking stuff, you can still do the background, but you can even take your current painting you're working on now, and as long as all of the petals are dry, we can do a background. And I'm going to show you, just go in there. You have to go in with the point of your brush and just go start in one end, and while it's still wet, work around it. And this isn't a big painting, so you can also create a really nice background just with the one you're working on right now. So I'm just going to make sure I have it clean. I don't want any yellow in this background, so I've got to find the blue that I'm looking for. This is more, I don't know what this one is. Got to look at it here. Not sure. That palette is it's so yellow, I can't tell. It's stained. I can't see if that's really blue or not. So I'm going to take some true, I know this is a good color. I'm going to tell you what color. This is called Manganese Blue, and it will be grainy, so I'm going to have to be careful with that. I've got phthalo blue and a turquoise. So I think I'll do the two of those, phthalo and turquoise. I think those will make a beautiful blue background. I'm going to kind of go intense, more intense than I normally do. And I'm just going to go, so if you're using it without masking fluid, just go like outside of your petals, kind of like the way with the point of your brush going towards kind of like what I'm doing here. But here I can be more loose because I have my masking fluid. But if you don't have masking fluid, no worries. Just use the point of your brush and point towards the petal, and you'll get that point you're looking for. But this, having that pre-done a little bit ahead of time makes this a lot easier and quicker. Normally I'd be laboring over this background, but I just wanted to show you how quickly. But when you work with this blue or a background and you have large areas, work fast. And like here, I started here, and that's fine. I could pick up here later, but I want to, as long as I have a little area here, this needs to always be wet. In other words, you don't want seams where your areas are. So I'm just gonna kind of go crazy here, go quickly, and cover using my beautiful masking fluid as the it's a barrier to keep me from going crazy. But like I said, just use the point of your brush and you can still do it if you like that blue. And I love these blue backgrounds. I think they're so pretty. And I'm just going to go to the very edge. And I think I might need to lighten up a little bit. I'm kind of pretty saturated here. So instead of just a perfect solid same value, I'm going to make it a little bit lighter, kind of moving towards the side. So I'm going to blot this up a little so that it's lighter. A little bit like that. Now I've just blotted that off a little, and then I'll just kind of continue over here and get kind of a lighter, slightly lighter. It's still pretty dark, but it will lighten with the drying. There we go. So that made really quick work of the background because normally I'd be laboring over it, and but you can do that. You still can do it. I'm going to bring some of this blue in here. Maybe some in here. And this drawing is exactly the same drawing that I did. I just drew a circle, and then the circle was using the template, and then I just went ahead and did my drawing instead of doing the painting like we did on the first one. So that's my blue, and I'm going to leave it like that. And I might add a little bit of ultramarine blue, because ultramarine blue is a cooler blue. You can see how it's it's a little bit cooler. So I'm just going to throw that in a little bit here and there. So I have like a little variation of blues. And then I'm going to heat this thing, and I'm going to remove the masking fluid after I've done the center, because I noticed too, I've also masked that center off. So this center, I'm now going to go ahead and use that really dark, whatever I created, that brown. Oh, what is it? Just a mixture of anything to get a really dark color. So kind of mix up your colors to get your brown that you're looking for. This time I'm going to put a little green, dark green kind of color with my brown and get a different kind of color. And I'm just going to go into this area, and this is a lot lighter than I did the first one, but I'm going to do this in a little bit more layers. It's still brown, but it's not as dark as the first one. And I have some masking fluid on there, but you don't need, you can go back with a white pen if you want, and make your little pointy edges, the little pointy, using your brush. Just draw with your brush and be loose. You don't have to be perfect. Let those colors kind of do their thing. And let's see, I'm going to grab that purple color and maybe some more of that green. See what happens when we get purple and green together. We'll get a beautiful color. I don't know what that is, but it's pretty. And I'm just going to drop these colors in, and maybe some dark also. It's funny how my palettes change over the years, because this, I think I made this palette 15 years ago or 10 years ago. I don't know, it was a long time ago. And I have a totally different color range than what I'm doing now. So it's good to go back to your old colors, because you probably, there's a reason why I had those colors there. So, and if I looked at a sunflower, which I'm not looking at right now, I do think that they do have a darker center, or something happens kind of like in the center. I'm not looking at it, but I think there is. I'm just going to let that dry. Maybe we'll put a little blue in there too. Just kind of pull some colors that you don't normally, kind of mix a muddy brown. Don't want to say mud, but a mousy brown color. I've got this purple in there. I might throw some of that. This is like a maroon color. I'm just going to drop it in right in the center, and then off on the edges. And the darker, the better. You want it to almost appear black, even though it's not black. But from a distance, when you look at a sunflower, it has almost like very, very dark center, almost black, even though it's not black. There we go. I'm just going to leave that like that. Let that dry. Now this is where you need to have patience. And I could come back to this one after it's dried a little bit, but I think I've got to be careful though. When you're heating, you don't want to heat your gum, your masking fluid too much, because it may never come off your paper if you're not careful. So I'm just going to let that sit for a minute, because I think if I just play with it too soon, it's going to be a nightmare. So I'm going to come back to the one that we started. This is if I want to do I think a blue background would be fun. And we could go over today if you don't mind, because we may need to go over. There's still some areas here that aren't done, but let's say I wanted to just go in and make my blue background and start over here and just work my way around wet into wet the whole time. And this will take more time. But I'm going to leave this. I'm going to refrain from doing a background on this one. And I'm just going to do another layer in the center to kind of bring out, just to get the center to be more interesting. So I'm going to take my center, and I'm just going to go like little ticks, like little dark, uneven little marks here around the side, around the edges. And just kind of go into the center. And then that's how you can make, if you just make layers, little dots, like kind of uneven though. I'm making the sunflower seeds. And then after this is all done, I can come back with light to give the highlights too. Get your sunflower seeds in there. You have more texture. And then if you need to add more dark, go ahead and add that. I'm just going to throw in some darker ones. And that, like that, just like that. And I could kind of get that dark edge. I want to really emphasize this. And if I look at my sunflower, observation is a good thing. I'm going to look at the one I have in my desk. Okay, I see it. So what I think I need, after looking at the sunflower I have, is I want to grab a little bit more of this kind of an orange color. And I just want to bring these petals, some of them just a little darker, and pull some color out like that. Not every one, not every other one, but just kind of maybe the ones that are in the behind ones, the ones that are kind of behind, those I'll create just a little darker. And maybe I can even draw it all the way out. It wouldn't hurt, like this. Just kind of make just a changing of the colors a little bit. Just to add some depth. And I'm just layering very light layers. I'm not trying to overdo it, but this is giving like an impression of a shadow of those petals going inward. Plus I'm giving that the lines that I'm looking for too. Well, I think that one's good. And then I think I'll add a little bit of something here for the leaf, like just something to kind of bring that, maybe just one layer here like this, a glazing right over that. And then maybe another little layer. This is dry, so that's good. Just to kind of give it shadow. So I think that one's fine. I'm going to leave it alone. Now this one I didn't do a background, but I may do a very pale background. So pale, but I'm going to just use a little bit of this blue, and I'm not going to go as intense as I did the last one. And I'm going to start the background right up here, and it's going to be very pale compared to the other one. And I'm going in the way I was explaining, just kind of pointing my brush towards the petals. And I don't want to paint over the petals, but I just want to give them, get that point inside so that I don't lose the shapes of the petals, but I still have a background. And this is a much lighter, I think this is like diluted, much lighter than the other. In fact, I might even go even lighter. So it's just a very, very pale, sort of a sunlit background, the blue, but not so dark. I think the other one might be too dark. But it's kind of fun to go bold if you can. There we go. It's just, see how quickly I'm moving along, especially in this area here. I want to keep moving fast because if I let that dry, it will be an obvious line, and I don't want that. So just going to keep moving towards, just keep that wet and keep this wet the whole time. And that just got to move fast. And it's nice to use a pointy brush. If you've got a pointy brush, one that gives a nice point, because then you can get in those little nooks, the little petals, little nooks there. And then these little areas I could leave alone, or I could just take that and drag that so that it doesn't look puddly there, because you don't really want puddles And this will, I'm going to give the real true test of this tape because I'm, like I mentioned, I never used it before. So we'll see what happens when I remove it. Oh, too dark, so I've got to lift that color up. I went way too dark, but it's all right. It's got to move fast. Can't hesitate too much. And if I'll just let that, I think I'll just let the let those colors kind of blend. It's really wet. But as long as I keep moving quickly, and if you're not in a place where it's dry, like where I live, it's very dry here. So our little, these things can dry really fast. I'm moving quite quickly. And then once I have that area closed up, which I do now, I can relax a little bit, lift off some of this that's on the side. Maybe go back in here just a little while. It's still wet. It's not wet. That's definitely had dried. But areas that are still wet, I can go back into. And here I can just pick up a little of that sky behind the flower. Here I can do the same. And lastly, and my last but not least, I can take this section and quickly move around the leaf. And one more section here. I've got my little petals. I'm going to be careful I'm going to grab a little bit of sky right here and here. Maybe there, needs there, and just little points. And I'm actually, this table is not big enough for me to rotate it, but it would have been a lot easier for me to just rotate my board here a little bit. But there it is. That's it. And I'll let these, maybe put a little sky back in there, a little touch of it. That's it on that one. And then I think that one is just fine. I think it's going to look fine when I remove the masking tape, and I may want to add more stuff, but here with this one, I don't think I have time, and I won't do this right now, but actually I could probably take this off now. So here, I'm going to just see how this removes. And it does, and I don't want to spend the whole day with this, but what I have to do next is once this is all dry, once I've removed all of this masking fluid, wow, that's interesting. It comes off kind of interesting. Then I can, I'll paint my petals. And what masking fluid does, if you've pre-drawn, the masking fluid will remove your pencil marks pretty much. I don't think I see any. So, but that's good because I can just paint those petals and get to it. Now I have to show this painting after our class is over because I won't have it taken off in time, but I'll do the same technique I did with this one. I'll do exactly the same thing. And it just gives me it made it a quicker work of doing the outside, and I was able to go really bold and really fast and splashy. So I'd like to see how everybody's doing because I know I've chatted for quite a while and see how you're doing. And if you have questions, so I'm going to turn off this recording.